Hi guys, I'm Dan Rowbottom, racing for NAPA Racing UK. What made me get into the sport was my family have always been bike-based, two wheels, motocross or scrambling as it was called back when my dad did it. So when I was 3 or 4, always bikes around the family. Hopped on one, loved it, but mum vetoed it because it's quite dangerous and dad's broken bones and uncles have got plated legs and all sorts of stuff. So that was scrapped. Dad got me a kart pretty soon after that and I fell in love with it. Without sounding too old, that would have been like 93. So I think we went to see Mansell at Donington in BTCC. So yeah, it's a bit surreal, we've ended up there. You start racing at 8 years old and you think it's fun, but it's hyper competitive. Probably the most competitive karting we did would have been from the ages of sort of like 9 through to 14. We grew up in that really hyper competitive environment, but as you said, did lots of karting. I think we won 3 British Championships by the time I was 12, and we were very lucky, you know, we didn't have to spend a lot of money because we were always with a factory of some sort, with a manufacturer. So we were able to compete at really high level karting for a very long time. It came as a bit of a shock, you know, I turned at 15, 16, wanted to go car racing. I actually tested a 307 touring car, the old Halfords car, which is a Dan Eves car, when I was 15. And that was with VLR. So that really turned my attention to BTCC, I suppose. I enjoyed my karting because it was pure. You know, I think it's changed a lot now. I look at it now, I sort of look from afar and it's not the sport that I left. I'd encourage anybody to get involved. You know, it really encourages, as a young kid or young adult, I was probably a lot more advanced than kids at school because you just have to deal with high pressure, competitive environments from a young age. So, you know, I always encourage people to get into it if they can. You know, we finished karting, I was 16, wanted to go car racing. You know, in that time frame from 08 through to 15, I was constantly trying to go racing, you know, constantly trying to raise a budget, constantly trying to figure out what I could do. You know, I even went back to single-seaters in the States to try and do something over there, and nothing ever quite, we got close, but nothing ever really came through. So got back into Lotus, did that for a couple of races, and the bug bit. So turned my attention back to the BTC platform. I did a half successful campaign in Clio in 2016, but unfortunately the people who had funding it reneged on the agreement, so we had to pull out halfway through the year. But actually that was the best thing that happened because that's what led me into my relationship with Cataclean, and obviously the rest is history. You know, we've been going into year 6 or 7 together now. So yeah, that's been a really strong opportunity for me. The company that sponsored me in 2016 was a company where they did a similar product to Cataclean, but effectively, for all intents and purposes, they ripped the product off. So during that year, during that campaign, I was working with this other company. The guys from Cataclean reached out to me and said, look, you know, this is our product effectively in a different bottle. We're not very happy. We're trying to stop this. So, you know, we don't want you to become collateral damage, you know, in this process. So I was like, yeah, but I'm racing, so it's fine. Thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. And then sure enough, 6 months later, it all gone wrong. So first few weeks, I didn't know what to do. You know, we were in a lot of debt. You know, we'd run basically a Clio Cup car on multiple credit cards for half a season. So I was in a lot of debt. I was like, oh, what do I do? And then I remembered that one of these guys from Cataclean we bumped into, who passed me his business card. So went into my office, threw the drawer open, dug it out, gave this guy a call, and sure enough, you know, we met up and he basically said, look, this is what we want to do. We're going to take them to court. You know, if you help us out, then, you know, maybe I can look at helping you out with some of the debt you've incurred. And I said, well, I don't, you know, that was kind of my fault. That was up to me. But I really want to go racing and I need a sponsor for next year. You know, we'll write this year off, but we want to go. I want to do a full season of Clio Cup and I need a good partner behind me. So they agreed. I think initially out of a bit of devilment, you know, but pretty soon in 2017, the sales director, a guy called William Jones, came to me and said, look, you know, we're actually noticing some increase in sales the week after a race weekend. We're not doing anything any different. We can only put the two together and say this is, you know, this is linked. So together we worked hard. You know, we went and did a bit of market research and understood that actually post-race weekend our numbers in certain stores were increasing. And you know, summer break, for example, we have 5 or 6 weeks off and you could see the numbers slowly decline again and then the race would happen and they'd go up. So it allowed me to convince these guys that there was something in this motorsport game. So we did a second year of Clio Cup and then, you know, we narrowly missed out on the championship. We missed a race weekend. So actually to finish where we did was pretty good. And yeah, then BTCC finally happened in 2019. So it's only through their, I guess, commitment to me and my commitment to them that it happened, but it finally happened. So it was only the start of something, you know, I should have realised. You know, I think you get to BTCC and think, oh, I've done it now, but you're only just started, you know. So, you know, and then obviously, just like in 08, in 2020, we were all faced with the COVID thing. which kind of scuppered the plans a bit. So we had to have a rethink, a reset. We decided to not compete that year, and then came back, as you know, in 2021 with Team Dynamics, and since then it's been a really solid platform, you know. You know, our first year in 2019 with Sicily was a good year ultimately, you know, not success-wise, but it allowed us to actually explore the platform for what it is. You know, we understood that actually BTC is pretty big. You know, it's a lot. When you're racing in the support paddocks, you think that, you know, you're in the same paddock, so you've got access to the same tool set, but you haven't. You know, touring car takes everything up a massive step. It was a good learning year. We understood what was good, what was bad, what we liked, what we didn't like, how we can manipulate that further in the future. But that ultimately led to the decision when COVID happened that actually we need the fans here. You know, we need the fan base. It forms part of the big commercial plan that we've got with Cataclean and with what we were trying to do ultimately, which is sell products, you know, sell bottles of Cataclean to the automotive user. So as much as 2019 was good, it also gave us lessons that we knew when COVID happened we couldn't continue. And ultimately the decision became quite easy when the opportunity with Dynamics came around. You know, good car, good team, good history, you know, racing for Matt Neal, you know, who was one of my touring car heroes really, you know, obviously being a local lad, local to them. It was kind of a halo moment for me. 2021, our first year was great. You know, we won the Jack Sears Trophy with them. Won my first race, a couple of pole positions, it was great. But then the second year, you know, through no lack of effort, you know, everyone put a lot of effort in, but we weren't competitive. And obviously our contract came to an end. So then 2022 ended. And actually the decision was kind of taken out of my hands at that point. Cataclean saw an opportunity with NAPA, NAPA saw an opportunity with Cataclean. I think everybody's seen how much NAPA UK have came into this and really stepped the game up, you know, from a fan perspective and engagement perspective. And it was something that Cataclean wanted to be involved in. So, and I'm very glad they did, because, you know, we finally got to a place where everyone's pushing the same direction, and yeah, it's a great thing to be a part of. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, as you say, when I started in BTCC, Adam Morgan was my teammate, very experienced. He'd won a good few races by that point, and together, Adam and I grew up actually through cadet karting, so we knew each other anyway. And I learned a lot from Adam, and then obviously as we moved into Dynamics, you know, I remember when we announced, and it was announced we'd be racing with Gordon, there was a lot of negativity online. Oh, you won't be able to compete with Gordon, blah, blah, blah. In 2021, I was the first driver out of the two of us to get the first pole that year, so that was quite good for me, because I was like, well, and actually the first win. So it just allowed some of the negativity to simmer down. It was back for last year, but that doesn't matter. And again, you know, having to compete with Dan and Ash now, those guys are two of the quickest guys on the grid. Ash's record speaks for himself. Arguably, Dan Camish probably should have had 2 championships to his name, but a lot of bad luck on 2 occasions. But I'm a firm believer that if you want to be the best, you've got to beat the best. So surround yourself by the best people. Every weekend's a school day now, you know, because there's things that all 3 of us do that actually, you know, I'll look at Camo's data and I go, well, that's better than what I'm doing, and Ash, you know, and we all do the same thing. So we're able to push each other on quite a lot, which is good. I think you saw that in the success of the team last year. You know, we just keep moving forward. But on a personal level, you know, my results weren't where they want to be. So the main task of this year is to actually have a proper year. And you know, if we don't arrive at Brands Hatch GP with a mathematical chance of winning, then that's been a failure for me. You know. Yeah, so to clinch a first pole last year, there was obviously a lot of pressure. As through the whole Dynamics thing, a couple of years previously, you know, I had a lot of negativity online. Oh, you can't beat Ash, you won't be as quick as Camish, you know, you're only there because of the money, you know, all the usual non-educated responses, I suppose. But to clinch the first pole was mega. You know, when Ash and I looked at the data, we both probably left a 10th and a half on the table, so we could have both egged up again, I think. We were both quick, we were both clear of the car in second, but by working together, we were able to push and find more time. But yeah, it was important because it just cemented myself and went, right, I can do it, I'm here. First round was an average weekend, put it on pole, screwed up a little bit in the first race at the start. We all got collected up at Old Hairpin. I think it was me and Camo actually got into each other, but it was wet, we locked up. I ended up in the gravel, kept it going, but you've now dropped into sort of, you know, 6th to 8th, so that's kind of where we were finishing, that was our pace. Race 2, if you remember, it was that race where everyone was on slicks and it was raining. You know, as we were warming the tyres up, I could see the rain on the floor. I'm like, this is a wet race. Asking advice to the team, they can only see what they can see from the pit lane. Everyone stayed on slicks, so you know, they said I'll stay on slicks. I knew it was a wet race, so that's a lesson learned. Just do what you think's right in the future. And then it was an average weekend. Brands was disastrous. We had that big crash with Stephen Jelly in race 1. I think I said in my on the limit interview, if I had my time again, I'd do the same thing. But you know, as the regulations are written, I was in the right place. I'd just use more grass this time to try and avoid the BMW. But again, race 1. So you're now starting race 2 from the back and you're working through. Snetterton was an average weekend. Thruxton, I felt that we finally got somewhere. You know, we had a disastrous race 1. We had a front tyre let go out the back. So then we started race 2 from the back, but we came through to win race 3. So that was good. See, at Alton Park, race 1, we had a problem with the brake pedal. I couldn't do more than 3 or 4 laps without the brake pedal going really long. And I remember saying after qualifying, look, that car ain't going to last a race. We need to find something. And the guys worked really hard. They couldn't find anything wrong overnight. You know, they stripped the whole thing down. But sure enough, 1 lap to go, brake pedal went to the floor and we had a big crash, I think, with Taylor Smith. But yeah, I mean, just starting race 2 from the back and so on and so forth. And then Knockhill was just a weekend of an average weekend, average qualifying, I think, P12, race 1, electrical failure, running up to the grid, so couldn't even start the race. Then you start in race 2 at the back, but you know Knockhill, you can't, you know, it's difficult in modern touring car, you can't overtake. And then race 3 was really good actually, it was really, really wet. Probably the worst conditions I've ever raced in. You couldn't see from here to the car in front, you couldn't see the brake lights, it was bad. But for whatever reason, the car and I just clicked and we went through from the back to the front. And I think we were up to about P9 or P8 after starting pretty much stone cold last with about 8 laps to go. And I thought there's a top 5 on here and I just got greedy and threw it off at turn 1. But I enjoyed myself, that was the main thing. But yeah, you know, we just had too many what-if weekends, you know, so we need to rectify that. For me, my only interest is win the championship. So if I get to a point where I can't win it, then the next best thing is how can I help the team win it? So it was at Croft, it was quite early on. You know, realistically, the chance of me winning it were quite slim. Dan had a chance, but Ash was almost a shoo-in at that point. So, you know, I sat down with Pete and Ollie and Malcolm the night before the race. I said, look, if I'm winning the race, then it's going to be difficult. But if I'm P2, you know, and Ash is behind me in P3, I'm happy to. And they were like, are you sure? It's quite early on. I'm like, well, you know, this is what we're doing. You know, as long as it comes back at some point in the future, we'll do it. So it was quite early on. That was only the halfway point, but I was happy to do that. And then, yeah, you know, as that continued, when I was in a position to basically give Ash some points, we did. And then I think the one that hurt me the most was qualifying at Silverstone. So I'd screwed up the whole session, terrible job. And then right on the last lap, we were quick. So we had a green sector 1, purple sector 2. And as I'm going into Luffield, so into the last right, I had a radio call saying, can you lift off? Why? Ash is in P10, if you go quicker, you're going to knock him out of the top 10, and we can't afford that. So I rolled off the throttle on the way to the line and qualified like P15, but 15 at Silverstone is not good. It was only for that wet race 1 where we managed to get through to second that actually saved the weekend, really. It's too hard now to win this championship on your own, so ultimately it'll be up to Ash. If the chance is ever reversed, we'll see what Ash does, but you know, if he doesn't do it, I'll kill him, but you know, with my fist. I think what Pete Osborne did was he brought a race team that were already very well established. They had some good success. They hadn't won a championship, but I think when Pete started all this, he planned to have somewhere that he could control for his boys to go touring car racing, which is one thing. Next thing you know, he lands probably the biggest commercial deal that the championship's seen for a good decade now. Then he signs Dan Camish, which is mega. Then he signs Ash Sutton, which is mega. Then they get to the end of the year and NAPA go, we want 4 cars, which is unbelievable. Then, you know, then we go there, and he's just, you know, I'm in awe of Pete, because what he's done is he's gone, right, look, I want the best of everything, and he's just pulled it all together. The best people, I'm going to say the best drivers, or the drivers that I think are more willing to work together than anybody else on that grid. Great engineers, great staff, and just a great ethos. They've just moved the premises from near Brands Hatch to somewhere more central Northampton, so they're right in Motorsport Valley now. And you know, they just do everything really, really well. Their heart and soul's into it. You know, the whole picture is actually quite synced together, and that's really rare. You know, you usually get a good driver with a good car, but the commercials aren't right, or you get a great engineer and a great driver and the team aren't in the right place. But you know, Pete's really given us all a platform to succeed. Having said that, you know, Ash has got his great set of people around him that he's had for a long time. Dan's now going into year 3 with his people, and I'm going into year 2 with mine. So we're slowly catching that deficit up. But you know, there is always going to be a deficit because time heals a lot of things. You know? The only thing I've got left to do really is to prove to myself that I can do it. You know, so for me, you know, we've had race wins in the BTC, which we never thought we'd do. We've had pole positions in the BTC, which I never thought I'd do. You know, I think as a family, we've came from somewhere where, you know, we went karting together with a knackered old caravan, and a Sherpa van when I started. So for an achievement for what my mum and dad, you know, they've sacrificed everything. It's their sacrifice that's put us where we are, really. So, you know, for me, the only real thing to do is just to try and go after the championship. It's the only reason I do it. You know, I've done it now. I don't, you know, if that was enough, then I could quite happily walk away. But it's in me now, so I've got to try and do it. Obviously, there's always next year, but now feels like the right time for me. We need to make 2024 a good year. It's very difficult to win a BTCC championship. You've got to be really structured. So I suppose that's what my aim is to have that structure at the start. I'm not ashamed to say if I won a championship and didn't win a race all season, I wouldn't care. You know, for me, it's about winning the championship and having my name on that trophy as my little bit of history. So I'm not precious about it. If we went and won 10 races, great. But if we won 0, but we ended up with enough points at the end of the year to clinch the championship, I wouldn't give a flyer. So for me, that's the target. Let's just put a structure together and see if we can do it come the end of the year.